That's right. It's the morning show right here on ABC News Radio KMET 1490 AM. Joining our live streaming audience there on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and LinkedIn. Glad to have you with us on today's show. We got lots of information coming in from around the world. Interesting information, and at the same time, we'll try to keep it a little lively, of course, try to keep it less dramatic, less amoeba eating, bacteria infested of the brain, which unfortunately is an article that our very own Jesse Sanchez looked up. Jesse, you there with us? Good morning. Look, lots of people going a little freaky out over there. What's going on with that bacteria? Mm. Close, a neti pot. Yeah, a neti pot. Yeah, and this is one of those things. So for those that don't know, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster declaration in Brazoria County on Sunday after the discovery in the local water supply of an amoeba that can cause a rare and deadly infection of the brain. He said this in the news release, quote, "The state of Texas is taking swift action to respond to the situation and support the communities whose water systems have been impacted by this amoeba." He said, quote, "I urge Texans in Lake Jackson to follow the guidance of local officials and take the appropriate precautions to protect their health and safety as we work to restore safe tap water in the community." The governor's declaration follows an investigation of the death of 6-year-old Josiah McIntyre in Lake Jackson this month after he contracted the brain-eating microbe, which prompted local authorities and experts from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to test the water. The preliminary results came back Friday showing that 3 out of 11 samples collected tested positive. One of the samples came from a hose bib at the boy's home, Lake Jackson City manager Modesto Mundo said. The others came from a splash pad, play fountain, and a hydrant. The notification, according to Mundo, said the notification to us at that time was that he had played at one of the play fountains and he may also have played with a water hose at the home. On Friday night, the Brazos Sport Water Authority issued a do not use advisory for 8 communities after confirmation of the presence of Naegleria fowleri, which destroys brain tissue, then causes swelling of the brain, known as amoebic meningoencephalitis. It urged residents to not use the tap water for drinking and cooking. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality urged people to avoid water going up the nose when, get this, Jesse, bathing, showering, or swimming, and prohibited children from playing with hoses, sprinklers, or any device that may squirt water up the nose. It also advised running bath and shower taps and hoses for several minutes before use and boiling tap water before drinking. Now, by Monday morning, the do not use advisory was lifted in Brazoria County, but a boil notice remained in Lake Jackson, where the TCEQ, along with the Texas Department of State Health Services, the CDC, the Environmental Protection Agency, and conducting operations to flush and disinfect the city's water system where the amoeba was found. Now, a different statement from the commission said this: Naegleria fowleri is a type of amoeba that can be managed using standard treatment and disinfection processes. To ensure the water distribution system is safe, city workers will convert the disinfectant used in the distribution system from chloramine to free chlorine, a practice known as a chlorine burn. Chlorine is more useful in deactivating certain types of bacteria that can make it difficult for the systems to maintain a disinfectant residual. That's according to a commission statement. Over the weekend, city officials handed out boxes of water for the population of about 27,000 at a temporary distribution center. The water-loving amoebas found in warm lakes, rivers, and springs. People usually get infected when swimming in these locations as the microbe travels up the nose and into the brain, where it destroys tissue, causing brain swelling and death. Initial symptoms range from headache, fever, and vomiting to loss of balance and hallucinations, and infection can lead to death normally within 5 days. Although infections are rare, the microbe is usually fatal. So, look, obviously, a lot of information coming in from Texas over there. Obviously, the question obviously is why now, right? So many things going on around the world. It's one of those things when you have one of these situations and happen to a young boy, you kind of wonder if there are other situations or things that are going to pop up in the local area. And Jesse kind of reminds me just a little of the Aaron Brockovich situation way back when. Did you ever see that movie? Yeah, and in that story, there was a lot of cancer dealing things, which it was an upward battle to be able to prove this. But it does make me wonder about the financial toll this is going to take on this county as well as the water district, because I mean I can only imagine obviously that family saying, well, who was responsible for that? But then of course other people wondering, well, what's going on with that? Because I'm sure this isn't an isolated event, right? Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Look, I've got questions about this. It reminds me of back in the day with mad cow disease, which I believe is still a thing, right? And there were certain cows that would have this, also a brain eating disease that unfortunately would infect people just by the eating of it, right? So it still begs the question to me if that can happen in humans with mad cow disease, is it really just through the nose, or is that the fastest way to get to the brain? Kind of like cocaine, right? There's people that snort cocaine, right? Because it gets into the blood system faster and gets into much more through the nasal cavity. But people do that left and right. But of course, it doesn't create a brain eating disease overnight. So I've got questions that need to be answered. Obviously, these are one of those things I don't really like to share because it's very like problematic when it kind of I don't like to spread fear into people, but I thought of something yesterday, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this. A lot of you, I keep saying, don't spread the fear, don't spread the hate, don't spread anger, madness, frustration. However, I'm very much on thinking more positive than negative, right? However, there are certain situations where you have to say, whoa, let me take a necessary precaution and let's just do the right thing. So in this case, Jesse brought this to my attention, which I'll be honest, I was a little on the fence of sharing it because you never know what's going on in that particular county. However, how important it is that the doctors actually found this to be the case and were able to cause awareness. It makes me wonder how long it took for that to get not only discovered, but then taken to the next level. And of course, for the actual county to do the right thing and say, we're sorry, let's test. And then all of a sudden, here are the tests. These are the conclusions. We need to take the next step. And it's a lot of pie on a lot of people's face, but better to be a lot of pie than a lot of unnecessary deaths. However, that takes me back to Flint, Michigan. How long did that take for Flint, Michigan to be A-OK? Remember that, Jesse? We had the guest on to talk about the actual Flint, Michigan situation, which still needs a lot of work and a lot of help as well. But that took forever, right? Yeah, it is. All right. Well, we'll fix that around the corner. In fact, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more stories and hopefully Jesse's audio for your streaming audio. But if you want to hear him anyway, just download our app. It's KMT 1490 AM. He's streaming live there for sure. We'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned. Let's see if you guys can hear. Jesse, go ahead and do a quick test there.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Hold on, I'm going to do a quick little. For those of you tuning in, hold on. Oh man, it says trying to reconnect. All right, so for those of you tuning in, I got it on. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we got him. So that's our Periscope edition. So you guys on Periscope, say hello. We'll do a shout out to you guys. Let's see. We've got I Miss Teen Wolf too. Thank you for tuning in. Good morning to you. So wait, you are Teen Wolf. Is that what you're saying? Is that where we're going with? Because that's kind of cool. And wouldn't it be cool, Jesse, to be Teen Wolf? I mean, I don't know about the whole changing and morphing into a wolf, but it would be cool to have the powers without the wolf, right?
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to be the wolf. So,
Who does it, right? Arr, let's all do the arr. All right. And then tuning in. Thank you, Hino Yosa. Thank you for tuning in. Black Jack Joe tuning in. Thank you, Black Jack Joe. Cap tuning in. Tigra tuning in. Real Mike Pasqua. Thank you for retweeting and sharing that on Twitter. For those of you on Facebook, let me bring you guys up as well. Let me do it on my phone because sometimes Facebook kind of messes up my situation here, and then we start getting blocked up, and that's never fun. All right, let me bring you guys up on Facebook, and here we are. Let's see who's scrolling. All right, cool. We got, thank you guys. We got Rosalie tuning in. Thank you. We got Penelope. Thank you. And let's see, we got Katya Wunderland tuning in. Thank you. Appreciate you.
10 seconds.
And feel free to share. Feel free to get the information out. And okay, let's go.
2 seconds.
That's right. It's the morning show right here on ABC News Radio, KMET, 1490 AM. Joining our live streaming audience over there on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, of course, LinkedIn, YouTube Live, and wherever else we could possibly find a streaming audio service. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us on today's show. We got Mr. Jesse Sanchez over there, kicking it up quite a lot over there. Jesse, what's going on in the entertainment sector?
Good. Honestly, I kind of squealed about 2 stories today. Joaquin Phoenix had a baby with his wife.
Oh, I read about that.
Yes, I think the name is what was shocking. Or not shocking, but just like heartwarming. And I can probably give you one guess on what the name would be, but can you guess?
Let's see. Does it have to do with water?
Yes.
That's all I got.
Okay, yeah, he named it after his brother, River. So
that's touching. That
it is.
And for those that don't know the story, Jesse, can you kind of fill them in?
Yeah, River Phoenix is Joaquin Phoenix's older brother, and I believe he had, like a lot of actors, had a problem with drugs. So sometimes I wish I can go back in time and just talk to these actors and just be like, just wait, give it some time. But yeah, he had problems. It happens. Sad.
Yeah, and you can't fault really the person for those, especially drug addiction, right? Drug addiction is, and we talk about that a lot here on the show. I did a whole after show series a couple weeks ago about that situation. And for those of you tuning in, if you are a family member and or personally the person trying to overcome, because I would venture to say, Jesse, a good majority of people that have drug addiction don't want to be addicted to it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, I think I can understand. There's just like that drive, that need, that you want it.
Right. And then sometimes just admitting it is the hardest thing. And I would figure that the majority of people, kind of like a bad habit, right? Whenever you have a bad habit, you suddenly want to get rid of the habit. But sometimes when you want to get rid of the habit, it's kind of difficult. For example, a lot of people drink a lot of sugary drinks, right? How many times have we heard it's not good for diabetes, right? And yet some people, like myself included, I'm the first one to admit to this. It took me a while to finally unwind my mind to be able to say, okay, I'm going to drink less sugary items. Sometimes I need the sugar because I feel like I'm getting a sugar crash.
Mhm.
And I need like so sometimes I'll drink like a Sprite, right? To get me like, oh, okay, I'm back, right? But as of recent, what I have found is sometimes when people want to do what's right, they find it very difficult. So if you find it difficult, just try this. Just say to yourself, say, um, and I did this exercise with people on a completely different video, which is it's nearing about 200,000 views. It's on my Facebook page for heartbreak, and there's some other things in there as well for well, just go ahead and watch it. I'll repost it later today. You can watch that. But there's an exercise that you can do, and a lot of people call it neuro linguistic programming. I don't know if you've ever heard that, Jesse.
No, never have.
Yeah, it's a form of hypnosis, which a lot of people go, whoa, no hypnosis, and then some people go, well, hypnosis is funny. I don't believe it half the time, but there's a lot of people that apply it, misapply it, and other people that just do the wrong thing with it, right? So I'm not ready to like mass hypnosis people. That's not what I'm about. But sometimes there's a way to unlearn certain behaviors. But back to drug addiction, I feel that that's a biological behavior that is very difficult to completely get rid of like overnight. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Because the body becomes very, very, in lack of a better term, kind of hypnotically, kind of all of a sudden, and I know people are going to take issue with this, but kind of open to suggestion of, the drug makes me feel good, so I'm going to do more of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because if the drug didn't make you feel good, all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, okay, I don't need that, right? So the problem is the biological portion of the brain, which is for example, the dopamine is a very happy drug which is released into our chemical system. True or not true?
I I'm gonna say this is true because I think I've heard this. It sounds familiar.
Which cocaine actually activates a center of our brain which releases the chemical of dopamine, which is a chemical that actually creates a little happiness, right? So it's called the happy pill, right? I mean, there's certain pills that do that, right? And there's certain pills that have a chemical reaction, but the problem is it releases sometimes a little too much and or not enough, so the body says, hey, I want more of that, right? I need more of that. So there's a lot of chemical interactions that happen in the brain, back to like the amoeba bacteria brain eating disease. But unlike that one that affects at brain tissue, sometimes some don't affect brain tissue, but they affect the person's chemical biological system, but it's all originating in the brain. Now, certain ones actually attack the bloodstream, attack the brain, also attack the heart, attack other things. But let's go back to the very simple thing that we all know about, which is called pharmaceutical, right? We all take certain pharmaceutical pills and or things to help counteract usually certain chemical sectors of our brain, which will affect a necessary change in the brain, which again, a lot of people go to depression. There's so many different levels of depression, though. Some are very clinically enabled depressions. Suicidal victims, unfortunately, are taking medication, and sometimes some of the medication actually says exactly be careful because it may cause suicidal tendencies and or thoughts, which kind of begs the question: why are those even on the market? Do you know what I'm talking about, Jesse?
Uh, I actually do know exactly what you're talking about.
So my point is sharing this is to let the public know again, especially if you're parents, if there's a particular medication that all of a sudden your kids are taking and or teenagers or even yourself and you're wondering why am I getting all these odd thoughts in my head, right? You definitely got to go back to the warning labels and say, you know what, let's check this out again and see what's going on with this medication. Once you realize that, you see all of a sudden, what? That's actually a warning on some of these labels, Jesse. And some of these are antidepressants. And you got to wonder, well, why are these still being released out there? And then the second question is this causing more harm than good? For example, I know a lot of people attack, for example, video games and or guns and or shooters, right? But at the flip side of that, a lot of people are not asking the obvious question, well, what about some of these pharmaceutical pills that the person's already on? Or can these particularly have a chemical imbalance that may cause a lot of harm to the person by all of a sudden kind of getting more dark, more mysterious, more moody, more angry, more mad, and all of a sudden, quite all of a sudden, suicidal. Because there are certain drugs, if you look at the actual symptoms and or side symptoms, guess what?
Yeah. Probably a lot of side effects and really bad side effects. It's like, why take the pill if it's gonna cause all of this?
Which I'm all for. Here's what I'm not for. I'm not for getting rid of medication because I've seen oftentimes, back to my stepfather, right? He has schizophrenia, right? It's referred to as schizoaffective, and to be very frank with that, I always told people better to have him on medication than on no medication, right? So you can't throw all to the like wall and say, "Oh, forget, I'm not going to take anything because all of them have side effects." Again, this is a small majority of people that may get affected and or a minority of people. But isn't it better to not throw caution to the wind and say, "You know what? Let me go look at that medication one more time and let me see what the medication has the ability to cause," right? So I think a lot of people just need to kind of go back to the medication drawer and say, okay, let's look at this. Because sometimes, and unfortunately so, there are medications that like after 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, they start seeing a cluster of people that all of a sudden have a same symptom overall. Makes sense? And then all of a sudden you have the class action suits. That's where the attorneys come in. They try to prove it. They try to discover the situation. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, okay, we need to like put another warning label on these, right? Which is what you see on all the commercials, right? And they always, if you ever watch these commercials, they talk about these commercials, but then they have all, if you ever look at it, they have like a girl and a guy all of a sudden being very happy. And during that time of just a lot of visual cues, if you just closed your eyes and heard every single word, all of the side effects suddenly go, oh my God, why would I want to take that, right? So it's called advertising, which they keep your visual cortex all of a sudden very much in the know, but it kind of distracts you from the subtext, which is unfortunately all the symptoms that you're wondering, well, is this good for me or is this bad for me, right? And a lot of them are for like, erectile dysfunction and or other things that, maybe can be taken care of quite naturally and or not. But I'm just saying, remember, the symptoms are put there as a disclaimer so that they can't get sued at the end of the day. So if you get it, well, you kind of took it into your own advisement. Again, though, like I keep saying to people, doesn't mean don't take it at all. It just means be aware of the potential symptoms, be aware of the potential side effects, and then just be aware. For example, I had a close family friend which was meant to take a stroke medication, right? But it came out from somebody else, which was a family friend at a church, which said, oh, no, that medication is terrible. It caused this, 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 and this. To which I say, well, that may have affected you in your biological chemistry because everybody's biological chemistry is different. True or not true, Jesse?
True.
So obviously, if everybody's biological chemistry is somewhat different and or somewhat similar or sometimes a little bit different or a lot of different, obviously you can see that in a certain population generational gap or whatever you want to call it, in like a million people, right? There's an average of people that have pretty much the same chemical compens. Well, let's face it, everybody's different, right? Or not different. What do you think, Jesse?
Oh yeah, everybody's different. It's not going to be the same effect for everybody.
However, if you look at the flip side of it, if a certain particular drug is more effective in the majority of patients than not the majority, then you would have to say that the minority actually happens to be a select cluster, but the majority it works for the majority of time. You understand what I'm saying with that?
Yes.
So what I mean to say is technically, a medication doesn't come out if it's not effective. So the majority of people are somewhat. But then you have kind of the what's it called? Kind of the anomalies in people, right? So the question is, are you an anomaly? And if you are an anomaly, are you part of that 8%, for example, right? And if you are that 8%, then you kind of want to make sure that everything that you put into your body doesn't have an adverse reaction. For example, a lot of people talk about homeopathic remedies, which I'm not all for as well entirely. I'm not for any one thing because I'm always very cautious because I'm like, okay, That depends. Like, for example, talk to your nutritionist, talk to your specialist, talk to somebody that knows more than you do. Don't just research everything online and say, oh, it's going to be so good, because sometimes there's really good vitamins out there, but there's what's called overdose amounts. There's certain parts of certain chemicals. For example, if you take too much iron, did you know that it could actually cause adverse reactions in your body, Jesse?
No.
Yeah, if you take too much, right? But that's in certain people. Not all people do the research. Very interesting. But there's certain things that when you take too much of one thing, which I always tell my mom, because she goes, oh, no, I need like this, like a lot of this. I go, no, your body can only absorb so much of certain things. But sometimes your body's absorbing too much of a good thing, and sometimes that could be a bad thing, okay? So my point is this. Just beware of your own personal thing. Sometimes what affects somebody else doesn't affect you. Sometimes in the opposite end, so what affects you doesn't affect somebody else. So just remember, keep track of your own daily intake of whatever it's medication and or vitamins or such, and just do some research. Just, you know what I do, Jesse, all the time, of any medication that my mom gets all of a sudden like wanting to take all of a sudden because of, you know, person in the doctor realm says, take this, I automatically look at side effects. And I'm not going to lie, some of them have been more harmful than good. So here's what I say to people. Just look at the side effects of each and every one of these things. But back to drug addiction. Drug addiction is meant to bring out the worst and or the good in people. What do you think, Jesse?
I've only seen drug addictions pull out the bad, but if you can show me a good thing, go
Well,
ahead.
I think it's a hit and miss. And what I mean by that is this. In order to create an addictive personality, the question is the person already addictive, or does the drug create an addiction in the person, back to dopamine and other chemicals that are in the body, which unfortunately cause a person to want to go back time and again and again and again and again, right? For example, I know some people that could drink alcohol and stop at just one, and they never become alcoholic, right? There's some people that have what I call a tolerance to alcohol, but the question is, in the moment in time, all of a sudden, if they're weak and or depressed and or mad or angry or sad, all of a sudden, if they turn to that as a chemical, you understand what I'm saying? Almost like a void that is in their body, and they say, I just want to forget things, right? Does that create an addiction in them?
I think it could.
So are we all immune to it? I would venture to say, I don't really know. I don't really know. But back to DNA analysis. Odd thing, again, we talked about somebody before, and I've been doing a lot of research about DNA analysis as well, and some of it really interesting. And there's certain chemicals and certain DNA markers that they're discovering day in and day out, which actually show that some do have what is called an indicator gene, a genome, which is referred to as an addictive personality, which we know of. But long story short, can you overcome it by compensating with a different chemical and or by completely rehabilitating the mind, and or is it part body, mind, and spirit, or is it all three? Look, here's what I know. If you're wondering about any of this, I can recommend one thing. Here it is. Soba Recovery Centers. They have several locations. Check it out. It's on my Facebook feed. It has over 120,000 views already, many of which have either called and or commented and or thought about it. Get the recovery that is needed, because I could theorize all day, but at the end of the day, sometimes we all need help to get over that drug problem. Sometimes we can't do it ourselves. Sometimes we need a helping hand. Sometimes we just need somebody to just step up and do the right thing for us, okay? So if you're that family member, or you're the person currently suffering from a drug addiction that you are currently unaware of, you might want to go check that out, okay? Sober Recovery Centers, go check it out. And if you don't get that type of help from that center, which is really good, by the way, the founder actually admitted on air in a couple of interviews that we had that he himself had a chemical dependency on several drugs, including alcohol. So he, foremost, is wanting to help the rest of humanity. And you know what? I think if he had unlimited funds, he would help everybody, if that was even possible. But look, we've run out of time for this segment. We need to take a quick break. But my message to you is this. If you take one thing from this segment, take this. Love your life enough to maintain your life enough to be able to help the people that are in it. There are people that are in your life that need you around. You may not see it right here, right now, but if you fast forward maybe 8, 10, 12, 15 years from now, all of a sudden you're going to find that there are people like you that need your help. And those are the people that will always need you around. All right, people, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying.
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now, imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
All right, guys. So lots of information, obviously, for a lot of you, and sometimes it's a little daunting. But if you take a certain amount of medication, just look at it and be aware. I'm not saying be scared about it all. Just be aware of it. Okay, that's it. Sometimes if you're aware of it and you start seeing, like, for example, sometimes people get dizzy spells, right? And they look at the medication, oh my goodness, and then talk to your healthcare professional. Say, you know what, this is, and that's what they want to know. They really do. Because they know, first and foremost, everybody's composition is different. So they may say, well, okay, that drug's not going to help you. Do this one. And I only know because I felt like my stepfather was kind of like a laboratory experiment. At one point, he was taking, I want to say, as many as 35 different pills at any given time. And
wow.
Throughout the day, yeah, he was like what I call a toxic buildup of chemicals in his body. Does that make sense, Jesse?
Just a bit.
Yeah, and sad because he kind of, I'm not going to say he did it to himself, but at a young age he experimented with drugs, which for those of you out there that don't experiment with the drugs, okay? That's the first and foremost, because he experimented with drugs and he always was very adamant with me, don't ever do that, which I think is why I never did anyone. Because I saw the effects of it later on down the line. And if you talk to really big healthcare professionals that know body composition, they'll talk about a lot of stuff like that. All right, we're out of time, so there you go. Talk about it another time. Okay. Welcome back. Yes, it is the morning show right here on ABC News Radio, KMET, 1490 AM. Joining our live stream audience over there, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, also on SoundCloud Edition. You can download our app. It's free. KMET, 1490 AM is where it's at. You can listen to with our radio audience if you're listening in the car, in the vehicle, and or just around town. We appreciate you wherever you're tuning in from. Whatever part of the world you're tuning in from, we appreciate you as well, which is funny, Jesse. I got a publicist friend who actually says, hey, can we have somebody on from New York on? And I said, well, our main audience is in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside, Palm Springs, and online. And she says, well, yeah, you're online, right? So I said, yeah, I okay. So we're gonna have somebody from the New York fashion district on in a couple of weeks as well. And I said, well, but that's New York, So, but she did bring up a very adamant point, which is that we are online. We're everywhere. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on all these things. So we like to know where you're tuning in from, because we find that the majority of you really do care about world news rather than local news, and we understand. But sometimes we have to kind of well, let's put it this way. Our main show audience is in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside, Palm Springs, in California. So that's why we try to keep it more local, but maybe we'll do a local and international one around the corner. Who knows? I don't know if that's even a thing, if we can do that. But we appreciate each and every one of you. Speaking of which, let's do some shout-outs now. We've got Teresa Mendez tuning in. Hello, Teresa. Glad to see you doing what you're doing. Teresa's a good person who actually I remember was going through a really hard time in her life, but all of a sudden she says, you know what, I want to take up makeup and I want to be really like do something with my life, do some makeup tutorials, do something. And I remember talking to her and I said, you know what, that's a really good idea. And then fast forward, like I think a year later, I saw her doing exactly that. And I say, more power to you, Teresa. You're doing a lot of good stuff. A mother of children that, again, you're inspiring people even with your posts. So keep inspiring, okay, Teresa? We got Yunos Kag who's tuning in, Vanessa Marie tuning in, Alvaro Orlando. Hey, appreciate you, Alvaro. Nanny Darlene, Naveed tuning in, Mohammed Shaikh tuning in, thank you. Elizabeth Mercado, thank you. Monica Hu tuning in, Jesse Jacobson, thank you. And many, many more. Okay, so let us know where you're tuning in from. We'll let everybody else know. Katya Wunderland tuning in from Switzerland, that's right. Greg Praetor tuning in, Eddie McLean, Trish, a name I can't even pronounce because it's, I think, Arabic, and I can't read Arabic just yet. Alejandro Patino, big shout out to him. Another great person doing some really big stuff around the corner. Algenia Kirsten, thank you. Elsie Henderson, Lori, John Huerta. Hey, John. I know John. Dale tuning in, thank you. And Ruth and others, Stephanie Reed, thank you. And others I just can't, again, pronounce. But look, however you're tuning in, we appreciate you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for Facebooking. And thank you for spreading the word, spreading the love. We have people constantly spreading the love in other group chats, and I appreciate that as well, because that's how people suddenly discover us. I go, how did you discover us? Some of us are like wondering, and we just like to know, because we like to hear where you guys are tuning in from, because it lets our radio audience know why we're online as well, in tandem with radio, because it's a thing. So there you go. We appreciate you. Okay, let's go to something a little bit more current, what's happening right now around the world. And Jesse, you have another story about Benadryl. What's going on there?
Oh, yeah. I think I mentioned it last week. Yeah, so I heard it on the news again today, and it's one of those, those TikTok challenges, eat the Tide Pod or whatever these kids do to themselves. This one is to drink large amounts of Benadryl to induce hallucinations. Don't do that. You're only supposed to drink small amounts of that stuff.
Yeah.
Every 4 hours, not a whole bottle.
Look, people. What Jesse? I mean, okay. We kind of talked about this, admittedly so, before the show, and we both said, "Boy, are we glad we're not young teens." Because I don't know about you, Jesse. Would you, going back to your young teendom of about, I don't know, maybe 13, do you think if you had social media then you probably would try out at least half of this stuff? I mean, let's be real. Let's be honest.
No. My mom didn't raise a complete fool. Like, I can be dumb at times, but not on this level.
You're like, that's a whole another level. I don't know, Jesse. I mean, you kind of locked one of your brothers up in a
okay. No, that's something different. He had a helmet on. Okay, so I put my brother.
It's so different.
Yeah, it's different.
Explain yourself, Jesse.
Okay, so I used to put my younger brother in. He wanted it.
I don't think anybody wants it. Go ahead.
In the dryer, but we had the door open, so we would just click the little thing to make it turn. So he would go like, ah. Yeah, he had a helmet.
Jesse, at least you practice safety in numbers. I'm happy for that much. You put on the thinking cap. What age were you guys at? Just out of curiosity.
Oh God, I want to say under 10, or
all
maybe
right.
under 8.
So yeah, no, you would never believe the Tide challenge. I get that, Jesse. You just wouldn't have even. Would you have tested? Do you think you would have tested your brother as a guinea pig though?
For the Tide Pod challenge, no. No, just putting chemicals in your mouth just sounds like a no.
I'll be honest. I was never that. I was a sheltered kid. Okay, I was a very sheltered kid. My parents taught me so much at a very young age. I was not dumb. Okay, but I was also the buzzkill of the group. You know that kid that always is the responsible kid.
Okay. Yes.
You and I would never have hung out because I would have said, I don't think that's right. I would have been that guy. I'm sorry, Jesse. I don't mean to, but it's just, it was, I think it was kind of bred in me quite early. I don't know why. I think it was just my parents always were like, don't cross the street without your parents. You know, they were, and then one time I did, and I felt guilty. I always feel guilty to the nth degree because I always felt like my parents always warned me. But then I maced a guy in the face. So I don't know. I just, you know, don't tell me everything. Cause then basically if it like caused harm to somebody else to help somebody else and or help myself, I probably would have like done that. Does that make sense? But I was always a person to protect somebody, never like throw out like to want to hurt somebody. But I don't think yours was to hurt. I think you just find it funny.
Yeah, it was just fun, but like we didn't do it for like long periods of time. It would just be like 1 or 2 rotations or something like that. Any longer, then it would just be weird.
1 rotation, 2 rotation. Hey, Mom, can we go to Disneyland? Ah, forget it. We have the dryer. That's fine. All right, so there you go.
We had to make our own fun.
Well, but this is what the kids are doing. This is my point. Okay, people, look, understand this, all right? The youth of today just want to have fun. True or untrue, Jesse?
That is true.
And I'm not gonna say they're completely. I don't want to call some bad names out because these might be some of your kids, and you might think, "Oh, little Johnny would never do that." Then you go, "Hey, Johnny, did you do that?" And they go, "No," with the Tide Pod in their mouth, right? So my point is this: don't be that parent which beats up your kids about doing some dumb stuff because they'll never tell you when they do dumb stuff, right, Jesse? Like, does your mom know you did that with your younger brother, or does he tell everybody?
You know what? I think I told my mom. I told my mom a bunch of funny stories that she didn't know about. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you didn't tell me."
Exactly. That's my point. Because I bet she probably would have like I'm not gonna throw her under the bus, but you know, some parents out there kind of go to the nth degree, not realizing you kind of want to be the parent that says, "Okay, well, maybe we shouldn't. Well, you know, walk away." Let it out in the comfort of your like own private vehicle. Say all the words you want to say. Get it all out. Once you get it all out, then say, okay, what does the logical mind need to do to be able to help my youngster on this, right? Because if you react and you overreact and you're that parent, you don't know how many parents I've heard talk to their young ones, "You moron, you pop," right? And they just yell at them like the kid should know better, but the kid's just like, so the kid will never tell you when they do something not cool, right? We'll just put it that way. It's suddenly uncool to be not cool. Does that make sense? Like, you, right? So no kid, I don't know what the correct terminology that the kids use now. We used to use dude, don't be uncool, or don't be like the buzzkill, right? I still get that one. So I'm trying not to be the buzzkill. I don't want to be that guy. I'm like, all right, you're gonna have fun for now, but you're gonna hate it later if you get into a car accident. I one time saw a person walking in such a way that he's like getting his car keys. I said, hey, maybe you shouldn't go on the road right now. I'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, but what about the other person, right? Maybe you'll be fine, but what about the other person? So I said, look, and I got into his mind by giving some suggestions that he thought, okay, maybe you're right. So thankfully, but I can't save everybody, right? I'm not that guy, but I think you guys can. So here's how you do it if you're a parent, okay? All you say is, hey, there's this thing going around. Have you heard about it? And they go, oh yeah, I heard about it. That's all you do. Okay, have you heard about it? You never say, have you done it? Don't do that, because they'll be like, I know what you're doing, right, Jesse? If your mom called that out, you'd be like, no, that's dumb, right?
Yeah.
Because kids that have done these things, I can guarantee you, I just throw it out there, and I know they've done it already. I did it a few times. They didn't know I was, like, manipulating their mind. But the long story short is, I just said, yeah, this is kind of crazy, right? I mean, so weird, huh? You know why some kids are doing it? They go, no, why? Right, but they know because they've heard it, right? They're very much aware of it. Yeah, they've done it because, well, here's the article, okay, people? So I'm going to give you this article so that you understand how to educate your kids. But never, ever, ever be like, Johnny, you didn't do that. You're not that stupid, are you? Don't do that. Because they'll be like, no, who would do that? And then they think back, they go, shoot, my sister did it. I don't want to throw her under the bus, right? Because then there's sisters and siblings. You don't want to, you know what I mean? I remember hearing this term one time, snitches get stitches. And I says, no, it's the dumb person that gets the stitches. It's the person that tells a family friend and or a responsible person. But you know what? Again, I don't want to be that guy, right? So here's the article, okay, for those of you wondering. Taking too much Benadryl can kill you. That's number one. That's the headline here, okay? But some teens and children are intentionally overdosing on the over-the-counter antihistamine as part of a social media challenge that may have already turned deadly. The situation has concerned officials at the Food and Drug Administration enough that they issued a warning against the serious problems that can occur if you ingest too much Benadryl. The online video encourages viewers to take excessive doses of Benadryl to induce hallucinations. That sounds cool, right, Jesse?
It sounds cool.
Thank you for being honest, Jesse, because some people, look, correct me if I'm wrong. There's certain drugs that do that, right? And people are like, yeah, right, this is cool. Yeah, I never freed my mind more than now, right? This is awesome, right? You know who you are, right? I don't want to be the buzzkill in the room, but we all do that every now and then, right? So my point is this. Back to the Benadryl challenge. It started in August. It's still going around. So it's been around. How many months is that, Jesse? August. Let's see. August, September, October. Wait. Yeah, so there you go. It's been around for quite a while. A 15-year-old reportedly died after doing the Benadryl challenge on the short-form video platform TikTok. I'm just going to stop right there. How many of your kids are on TikTok? 1, 2, all of them? And as much as there's good information, because I've interviewed people that have really put out a lot of good info, sometimes this type of information gets to them, and suddenly some kids are more prone to it than others. Or guess what? Little Johnny and or little Susie all of a sudden sees this and says, I got that stuff laying around. Maybe I'll try it out. And suddenly you come home and you go, what happened? Could it get to that level? Maybe, maybe not. The reason we're sharing this information with you right here, right now, is I feel that this is a little bit problematic of a situation that if it doesn't get nipped in the bud quite soon, it could suddenly get worse. And what I mean by that is this. If a young child starts off with hallucinations, even if they don't die, what makes you think that they don't want to stop at some point? And if there are other friends and or family members that say, hey, here's a drug that could create a better hallucination or hallucinogen, okay, well, let me take that. Who's spreading this type of information online to get to our youth? I don't care if it's another kid, another adult, or somebody else. It's just wrong. So let's, again, not be the buzzkill, but allow for our children to have this type of conversation, okay? And it depends at what age you're at, okay? So 8 and under, it's a completely different conversation, okay? And it's usually like this. Susie, hey, you know there's a thing going around on TikTok? Man, this is so funny. It's a Benadryl one. Do you know what that is? Have you seen it? Little Susie goes, no. That hesitation, not good in little kids. A hesitation, well, here's the thing. In little kids are very adamant to say no or say yes. They haven't learned to lie, by the way. Typically by the age of 8. Do you understand that? Unless you're the parent that jumps on them for every little thing you do. And what I mean by that is you do more harm than good when you jump on them like that. Don't jump on your young ones like that. I just saw it yesterday at a department store, and I got really angry. The adult had 3 young children. The youngest one was probably 8 months. The oldest one was about no older than 13. And the middle kid was about 7. And he said something so mentally abusive to these kids. I was like, am I the only one around here hearing this? Don't be that adult. If you're that adult, you need to stop right here, right now. You're causing your own problems. And what I mean by that is those kids are going to grow up more angry, more suicidal, more upset, more everything of what you don't want for them in your heart. And I believe that this guy probably was given a really bad situation overnight. And I think he was made to all of a sudden take care of these 3 kids. I don't know the story. I don't know where his wife was at or woman was at. All I know is he had it up to here. And he said so many abusive words to his young kid. And to the youngest one, maybe the youngest one doesn't know. He used some obscene language to his youngest. And then he turned to his oldest and he used more obscene language. And I know what many of you say, well, language is just a language. But you know what? When it's meant to harm the person's mental outlook of, he basically said, you're an idiot. But he did so abusively with words I can't even use on the air. Otherwise, I get fined. And if you ever know people like that, hopefully you're not that person. But if you ever know people like that, you need to kind of nip it in the bud. Okay? Just nip it in the bud. I know because I've done that on several occasions. Yeah. And long story short, I'm going to just end there. But remember little Johnny and or little Susie. Don't jump on them for doing these things. Just have the conversation like this. So the older kids, you say this, simple. Hey, you know what? I just heard on the morning show or other whatever show, and they were talking about this Benadryl challenge. It's so weird. Do you know what it does? And they go, no. Yeah, it's really weird. It's like it's meant to do this, but people think it's this. But I got to tell you, it doesn't do any of that. It actually can cause you to die. What? Yeah, it could cause you to die. So if you know, hey, do you have any friends that might have heard of this challenge? They'll go, yeah, I have 3 that actually told me about that challenge. It all of a sudden comes up. And you say, oh, wow, okay, well, can you tell your friends? Just don't do that, okay? Because it's really bad. It's really harmful to them, okay? You don't want your friends to die. You know your best friend? I mean, imagine if your best friend was to die all of a sudden. How would you feel? Put the perspective in their head about the other young friend. Oh, I would feel, I mean, seriously, wouldn't you feel terrible? Wouldn't you, like, if all of a sudden they died? I never thought of it that way. I know. Oh, man, Johnny, I wouldn't want you to, Look, Johnny, you'll tell me if you have this, right? Or if you know about this, will you? Because I don't judge you. That's very important. Don't judge your kids early. Don't ever judge your kids, but don't make them feel judged. Otherwise, they'll never talk to you again. You just have to do it in a very kind of like, in that way, kind of a palsy way. Does that make sense? So you say, so Johnny, look, if you do this, I'm never going to get upset. If you're honest with me, I'll never get upset. Okay? Just be honest. It's cool. All right, people. I've run out of time. Make it a great day, whatever you do. Remember, life is worth living. Live it well. All right, for the rest of you tuning in, I'm just, I gotta go. I got a very important interview to conduct around the corner. But here's what I want to leave you with, okay? Remember this. In life, there are little Johnnies and little Susies all around. And some of these are your own very own children. And I know that because I've had several conversations with parents over the last few weeks, which have had some really bad things happen to them, okay? Behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and or sometimes all of a sudden, quite admittedly so, suddenly discovered. Do not be the parent that suddenly jumps on your kids so that they do not want to share any information with you going forward. Very important. If you're that type of parent, your kids are going to bottle up everything they do from here on. And they'll never turn to you and or confide in you whenever they do something that they need to get help from. If they know they could turn to you where they need help, suddenly you become the person in their life that they always will trust no matter what. But if you beat down your kids so much so that they feel stupid for ever saying or sharing anything that they've done kind of dumb, here's what I regularly admit, okay? When the little 7-year-old used to be around, I would say things that would happen in my life to make it okay for him to say, oh, and then he suddenly shares something in his life that I already knew about, but I needed him to voice it in his own world. But you need to sometimes just say, you know what, when I was little, I did this. Or maybe they have another family figure. And you say, you know what? When your auntie did this, she was like this, that, the other. They go, auntie did that? No way. Right? And sometimes I'd make stuff up, honestly, about myself, just to allow the young one to say, it's okay. You know, when I was your age, you know what? I was a little younger than you, by the way. I was about 5, and I did something so, well, it wasn't good. You know what I did? I didn't apologize for my behavior. My mom, you know what she said to me? What? They get all intrigued. What did mom say? Well, okay, so she said this. She says, you know what? I know you didn't mean to do that, so I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to not give you a certain treat. But you know what I want? I want you to be a more kind kid. So I want you to be more loving. So you be more loving, and guess what? We'll all be more loving. Is that cool? Is that good? And then the little one, he's only, right, 7 at the time. He goes, oh, that makes a lot of sense. All of a sudden, he's starting to think, right? But you got to throw it off on yourself. Make yourself be not Mr. I know everything. Like, you know what? I was a kid too one time. I know you don't think this, but I was. And I remember what it was like to be like a little kid. And sometimes I didn't always know the right thing to do. But thank goodness for my mom. And then I'd always say, trust your mother. 100%. Trust your mom. Anything happens to you, you trust your mom enough to tell your mom, right? So that's what I tell each and every parent out there, okay? Be the person to be able to take the fall in order to help your kids out. Because sometimes some parents shield all of their wrongs, and that's not good. Back to my stepdad. He never shielded his wrongs from me. He was always very open and very honest, to which I thank him to this day. Because I know what to stay away from, and I know what not to include into my body. So, people, do the right thing by your own children. Don't attack them for doing some things that you think, oh my God, this is just terrible. Who would do this? And then you say that, and all of a sudden the kid's like, oh, I did that. But guess what? They'll do it again and again because they don't care now. Or they stop doing it, but then the next time they do something, they just don't want to share it with you. And you have to find out from somebody else's kid, right? So I say this, make your kids your friend until you got to be their parent, and then be the parent. But let some time wean off. And if they're taking certain drugs, medication, and or things like Tide Pod Challenge, just be okay with having the conversation to help them out, and don't jump on them. Don't ground them. Don't. Some of you still use, other methods that I don't necessarily agree with. But you know what? Each to their own, and to which I say, no, don't do that. Don't be abusive. There's other ways to be able to talk to your kids. Trust me, there are ways to research from people. Get books. I used to buy books at the age of just a couple years ago because I had a little 5-year-old always around. And I thought, how do I deal with a 5-year-old? So I had to do a lot of research. I picked up 3 big books that I'll share in a future show, of which was able to kind of get into my head so that I could go, okay, how do little kids think? Because little kids think differently than young adults. I know how to talk to a young adult to draw them out. It's the youth of our generation. I didn't know, but now I do. To which I say, just do the right thing. Don't do the wrong thing. Don't let your anger get so mad, so upset, so angry that you suddenly make your kids want to shut down, and never open their minds and or thoughts to you, so they don't know if they can trust you. Don't be that parent. If you're that parent, stop now. Okay? All right, people, I've run out of time. That's the morning show. Thank you for making it a great day with us. We'll see you tomorrow. Same place, same channel. Bye-bye, everyone.